lottery winners. Shademaster says prophets are fallible mortal men called by God. The debate is not proving JS is a prophet. Your burden is to prove JS is false. Jim Bob, to you.
Prophets are fallible mortal men called by God. Well, someone being fallible, a man that's fallible. No one says that a prophet is like just outright infallible. You have to look into orthodoxy on the exhaustion of what a prophet is. We don't reduce it to someone who's just errorless. That's just would be a straw man of the position. The debate is not proving, but he's saying that the debate is not proving Joseph Smith is a prophet, right? It's my burden to prove it's false. Yeah, but the thing is, under my standard, there is no. I'm arguing that there's no standard. So it's like, how could you? It's not under my position, like an orthodox position, because that's not what I'm critiquing. Of course, I can establish Joseph Smith is a false prophet under the orthodox view. The question is whether or not Joseph Smith is even a true prophet under Reuben's view. And it's established that he doesn't even have a standard that's a true prophet from his view.
I think I answered that view like quite a number of times.
Yeah.
Okay. Mexadox says affirming the consequent fallacy and the turtleneck fallacy. It is a nice turtleneck. I don't know why they're harping about it.
I think it's so much. Big. I was like, I just need to put. I'm like one of those. I can live like on like those giant like hoodies and like be fine. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Shademaster says they're fruits. JS founded TCOJCOLDS. I don't know what that is. That fights degeneracy and Bill Gates. Why is Jim arguing like an atheist?
Well, that's really interesting. So a bunch of atheists and Satanists actually organize something to fight against Bill Gates and degeneracy, then that would be good fruits too, and therefore they're true prophets.
It's not one thing. We have quite a bit of things that.
Dude, don't fix it. He's the one who wrote it. He's arguing that if people fight against Bill Gates, then suddenly their fruits would then entail that they're a true prophet. No, you can have a bunch of degenerates turn and they don't appeal to Christianity or Mormonism or anything else and fight against Bill Gates. It says nothing about their legitimacy as prophets, dude.
What I'm saying is that we don't just fight. We also donate like the most money. There's a lot of things. It's not just one thing.
That's great. Evil Democrat psychopaths donate a lot of money to Africa too. It doesn't say anything about
money laundering. I don't know. It's money laundering.
Dude, are you autistic?
Probably, I think so.
Okay. Fair enough.
The way you answered that.
I mean, I have no issue with. I don't.
It was rhetorical. Nuke says, for the profit of doggy surgery, yes, we are still grifting for the dog surgery. Nyx blew her knee out. It has to get fixed. Please do your finest for that one. Mud says, give Sarah more money and like the stream, the spirit baby Bigfoot man, and God demands it. Thank you so kindly. Spyro is backstage and of course says, should I join later and show this guy is proving that Jehovah's Witnesses are also prophetic religion and we should accept that?
I actually don't know anything about them. And it's kind of something that's come up a few times. I really don't. And we never see them, even though sometimes people I've never talked to one. I don't know anything about what they believe.
Fair enough. Craig says he might be onto something. After all, the prophets and apostles did go to college.
That's funny.
I don't get it. That's the autism. I don't know what that means.
It's a callback. It was someone at a debate, and this guy was told that Christ established the apostolic college, and he was like, the apostles went to college. He thought it meant college, like going to college, as opposed to a body of people who go out and teach.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
Interesting. I'm a Hunter says a true prophet or a prophet is not a prophet and is in fact a heretic if they contradict the very scriptures they are supposed to represent. Any thoughts? Oh.
Is that akin to saying you cannot see if that means that you cannot fault in your belief system? The issue that I kind of have with that is for example, someone that is very fit eating a cookie. It's like we know objectively that, processed sugar and diet or, whatever it is, isn't great. But does that make them?
No. To make that analogous, Ruben, it would be like you're given prescriptives on how to help yourself. Let's say not eat the cookie, and you're actually, it's not about being flawed and eating the cookie and saying, "Oh, I failed." It would be more akin to you literally outright reject that eating the cookie is actually bad for you. That you're rejecting the dogma itself.
Got it.
Like you're just like, no, it doesn't make me bad. It's fine.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Turd Ferguson says Joseph Smith once claimed that God the Father was once a woman and then she identified as a man so that she could become a father. I predict the super chat will get at least 10 thumbs up.
Nice,
and when
Turd.
it does, I'm a prophet. I'm sure
Nice,
it did, Turd. Let's see. I'm trying to. This one's funny. Tara the Angry Potato. I like that. Sorry, there's a lot of ones in here that I just refuse to read out loud. So I have to kind of skip through. This one was kind of odd. Foxtrot. That was weird. You got called out by the Simp Brigade down there. Where the heck? How many words could a word salad toss if a word salad could toss words? That was good. Here we go. I think this guy claims to be a Mormon, yet has a Buddha statue behind him. Is he really expecting us to take him seriously? I think
I actually
Buddha
wanted to address that. So I have my whole spiritual, I guess, like background. So I guess since I was relatively young, I was always really inclined to just, I guess, seek truth, as you would say. And I still hold the different parts of my life. I don't throw them away. I don't even know what I would do. I wouldn't. So I do still keep all the parts that have made me who I am today in that regard, and I don't apologize for it necessarily, and I don't know that I should, or that it should be bad to not keep your own
so is
memorabilia.
Buddha, I won't get into it.
Yeah. That Brad said his measure is a burning in his bosom. Mexadoc said God came to be God. P13 Discourse 7 April 1844. Nuke says 4 more yellow maters. Yes, you guys hit 1 goal. Let's continue going. Altervoid says, wow, I just got here, but it only counts if you believe what he does. So this guy is the gatekeeper to God. Any thoughts there at all? Yes or no?
I would have. So our whole premise is that we're not gatekeeping everyone. So I don't think that's for me, but I'm not.
I think they're referring to when you were talking to Jim Bob and you were saying, through this way is why you would believe the prophet is the prophet, because you believe in God, you're spiritual. Yeah. And then Jim Bob said, okay, well, I do this too. So therefore, you know what? I think I'm a prophet, or whatever you were saying, Jim Bob. And then,
well, yeah, it was self-evident. So if you say self-evident, that means you are the source of knowledge, because it's to you, it's evident. But
no, when I would say like self-evident, it's like, for example, you go to the gym, you rip your muscles, it hurts, but then you get a positive outcome. So like, for example, I would associate that with the law of sacrifice, I think, in that way, right? So there's things that are temporally not pleasant, but that we can all agree fortify us.
I'm telling you though, Ruben, that's actually, even that example is not self-evident. What you're relying on is faith, and there's nothing wrong with faith. You're relying on faith in the regularity of nature, that when you do work out, that there's going to be this outcome that you can reflect on, that the world operates a certain way, your muscles release lactic acid, there are small tears. If those things don't happen, it's an inconsistency with the regularity of nature. So what it is you're doing is you're putting faith in your reasoning and your interpretation of the external world. And you're saying, well, the future will probably, I think the future will be like today and like the past, but that's like a faith jump. It's actually not self-evident. This is a problem of induction in general. I would highly recommend looking into the problem with even saying there's self-evident truths. Even whatever you say is self-evident truths, you're actually relying on your interpretation of your sense data, your reasoning, the external world. It's not actually embedded in the external world. You have to process it. And so there's a lot more going on than just like, oh, it's all so obvious to me.
Well, no, I would say so. I guess I like specifically like the law of sacrifice, right? I think that's in everything, right? You have a baby, it's painful, but then it's like a positive outcome. I think the certain patterns that present themselves everywhere, I would begin to constitute like the nature of God or reality.
I understand, but people soften the pain and stuff, so it's actually not clear that it's painful. Like we can soften all of our experiences and try to remove the disadvantages we don't like, and suddenly birthing's not painful because we have like drugs and stuff, and then you're like, oh well, where's the sacrifice in birth now?
You bring up a good point. That's where you start to get into derivatives, and like that's the issue with getting too, I always on the material side, because drugs, and next thing you know, you're totally numb for one reason or another.
Yeah, you're just being like that's the thing, is like you could just be in like a virtual headset where you're perpetually feeling good. If you sacrifice living in the external world, in the real world, for this feeling good, it's not necessarily good just because there's a type of sacrifice. Sacrifice itself has to be presented and conducted through a proper paradigm. Otherwise, it's not virtuous.
No, I agree. No, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Uncle Tiger Sneezes says, is Lyndon B. Johnson a prophet for saying, I'll have that voting Democrat for the next 200 years? Sorry, I missed that one. It's over, Ruben. Jesus warned us about you and Joseph Smith. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Matthew 7:15.
I didn't claim to. Did I claim to be a pro? I'm so confused.
I think Joseph Smith is. He's a wolf.
Joseph. Sorry, which one was it?
Saying Matthew 7:15 that Christ warned us about false prophets, but that assumes there's a standard that isn't just ask God or whatever. So what that means is that prophets existed, right? Before Joseph Smith. So if prophets existed before Joseph Smith, and some prophets in the Bible actually prophesied of current prophets in the future, that means if the term prophet did have a standard, not everyone was a prophet, right? So suddenly you have to appeal to the prophets that existed, and Christ saying, watch out for false prophets. That means that prophets existed. That means there's a standard for what a prophet is. And surely your standard wasn't the standard for what a prophet is.
Well, the next line is by their fruits. So I would say, I think I did answer that earlier.
Who determines the fruits if there's no authority?
I would say objective reality.
No. And we're back to self-evident truths, right? How do you who's the authority in determining what are good fruits of the body of Christ, the following the path? What tradition, what doctrines, what methodology, what is this thing you're talking about? Good fruits, because the guy who's defending you in the other super chat said, well, if you work against Bill Gates, I know a bunch of degenerate retards who work against Bill Gates, right? I don't grant them that they could be prophets simply because I align with them on working against some other demonic forces.
I guess I will say that we have a really, we believe pretty much most people are good. They're only really, 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 really awful people. So I'd say we're super gracious in that way, that we don't, but I wouldn't get too much into, I guess, the idea of eternal progression, but, I guess their output, so to speak, but I digress. I'm sure that's that. Or I don't know. Can we expand on these things, or are these quick responses?
Well, it's to be
quick.
shorter.
Yeah, it's okay. We can get into it into open panel. Red says, "Stop interrupting me." Masterclass by JB here. Win JB, win Sarah Tomato. Hold on, I gotta skip a lot of them. Y'all are nasty with your chats, by the way. Jim Bob, I've been saying that I'm the new Mormon prophet. I read the new and improved platinum tablets. Joey Smitty said he was wrong, and the Orthodox Church is one true church. Sorry, Mormons.
That's simple as that, Jason.
I gotta skip some more. Oh no, that one's still stupid too. God, this is weird. No, I'm gotta pass on that one. There's just so many. They like just went too far. I think this one's okay. Jim Bob, the logic we use to find orthodoxy cannot be used with them. The illogical extra leap to accept a modern prophet before Christ returns is a real magical sky daddy assumption.
Well, yeah, there has to be a thing. You have to go back in time to understand what a prophet is, to understand if there's a prophet that arises. So the problem is there was nothing in the Bible predicting Joseph Smith. Hence, he had to write himself in predicting himself, which is strange because there's other prophets in the Bible that Joseph Smith is appealing to that produced and prophesied on new prophets, but they just missed Joseph Smith. They forgot to say, by the way, the church in Timothy is going to be in darkness for 1,500 plus years until Joey Schmitty shows up and declares that Eden is Missouri.
The big issue that was also conditional, but the big issue I have with a lot of the biblical and religious stuff isn't even necessarily about itself, but the Constantine and like that whole section and window of time is, I think, deeply politically motivated.
So what? What's wrong with being politically motivated?
Well, it wouldn't be. So you wouldn't like Schofield. You would inject a political motivation in.
How do you separate?
For example, the imperialist nature became very imperialist, right?
How do you separate? How do you separate politics from your beliefs?
Jurisdiction and venue. To what? So I'm not saying that you shouldn't act politically on your beliefs, but I think the issue that happened is that the primary motive became a political imperialist motive, and then Christ very secondary, if at all, because everything moved into kind of this third temple ideology where this church or that church has imperial jurisdiction.
Even if that was true, it wouldn't follow that the church was dormant and in a blackout period until Joey Schmitty showed up in New York or something, wherever the hell he was.
That's why I would say that the orientation of the church and what it's supposed to do, and that's why I started with that, because if it's to come closer to Christ, those things are not, an imperialist view and coming closer to Christ, which is not of the world, are not going to be aligned.
Willem says, if you think that asking for a methodology / evidence is materialistic and pharisaic,
yeah.
It shows that you think that the only type of evidence is material evidence, and then you are the materialist. Clicker says, if all religions had some truth, then who decides which dogmas from different religions are true? Here comes the Buddha question again. Shots fired again.
Hold on 1 second. That was really important. I was going to ask that too, because there's something in Orthodoxy that at least puts people in the path to answering this question, which is logos spermaticos, which is there could be truths that percolate across civilizations, across eras, across time, across theology. It doesn't follow that they're all true or what their leaders say are ultimately true. It just shows that the truth of the matter can show up in different places. It doesn't mean that everything they believe suddenly is true. It means that you can that
we would agree with that. Yeah. I wouldn't say that everything someone believes.
But the question is good. The question poses it's a really good question, which is, if it's true that true things can percolate across cultures and time, what is ultimately the paradigm that's determining those things are true, valuable, virtuous, good, that requires something that isn't plural? It requires a standard. What would you say it is, Ruben? Don't say self-evident. Don't say self-evident.
So what is the center of truth when there's truth scattered everywhere? Is that kind of the question?
What is, if there's truth that shows up at different places and different times and different cultures and beliefs? It doesn't follow that all of it's true because some of it's true. The question is, if it's true that this shows up across cultures, what ultimately is the worldview that can tell you that those things are true? Those little things are true. What's the worldview? It has to be a worldview.
Well, yeah, you're not going to know the answer, but I would say that it would be self-evident so far. Like, so for example, a good example would be like Noah, or like all the floods. You know how there's a flood myth like in every country, like there's a flood myth everywhere. Like there's so many flood myths, and there's like underground cities that we kind of, like in Cancun and stuff. So So it's very likely that that did happen, which can begin to construe, well, okay, well, how did that happen? And what other things that point to that possibly happening can we find, right? There's a pole shift theory, the Atlantis noise. I mean, there's different. So it begins to point you somewhere, right? You begin to gather evidence and from, I would say, consistency in evidence.
I'll take it. Dumb sweater, but for the puppy, I still like the sweater. I don't know why they gave you so much shit for it. Mexadox with the big 10. So, Ruben, you're saying Christ came to bring truth, but it didn't go live until Joseph enabled spiritual DLC in 1830.
No, I would say no. I think there's a lot of people that are very. I mean, there's like a lot of mystics are still around. There's I think people, but I think the issue happened where I think a lot of people that became very religious, and at some point started to go against the inherent idea and doctrine and nature of Christ, because they became increasingly ritualistic and dogmatic. So I think that the Spirit of God and the nature of Christ has been present in people through all this time. But I think in many instances, the church was maybe getting people further away rather than closer in many ways.
Okay. 4 more, and then we're going to open the panel. Craig says, don't ask me a question, answer my question. And then Wellham says, if I only need to subscribe to the standard that truth will be revealed to me by the Father who is in heaven, isn't Joseph Smith contradicting that by giving us his own revelation?
Well, no, because he's saying that you should have your own experience in that regard. So he's basically saying, so I think that's a big difference, right? Where Joseph Smith isn't saying like it's me, and then there's like this new standard saying like it's me, but it should also be all of you. So that's why I think even in primary they have a song like my own, like find your own sacred grove. So the idea is that everyone should have an election made sure, or a Christophany, not just him.
Okay. Ruben, you said the truth is obvious and people can still be deceived, which means either God failed or your brain did. And I know where I'm placing my bet. Oh, Lord.
Well,
and final. Oh, yeah, you're welcome to respond. Go ahead.
I think people have inherent blind spots, right? I think, and I think whether they let themselves believe in those blind spots or they're really there, I think that's just the nature of spirit and the evolution of spirit, where you can wholeheartedly believe. And I think this is a really big deal, because I think people don't really understand, for example, what love is. I think most people aren't under like instant attachment. And then when it hits you, you're like, oh, so there's just things. It's like a looking glass, or the parable of the 10 virgins. There's things that by nature of where you're at, it really can't comprehend the next stage.
Okay. And then final one, just Gerald with a big 20 says, I found a magic hat. When I looked inside, I found a lost set of scriptures. I had my friend write down what I was seeing because I was the only one who could see it. I swear it came from God, the book of Gebert. Just trust me. All right. And on, go ahead.
Really quick, because I actually got into it with quite a lot of your things, because I don't ascribe to the idea that the plates were physical personally, and the church is somewhat neutral about it. Not really, but like you're allowed to not believe they were physical. But I found the only account that I can find of like Joseph Smith, a personal account, because there's a lot of copies of copies, and it construes that they weren't physical. It pretty clearly says in Joseph Smith's papers that it was shown by revelation, and that other people saw it by ministering angels. So I don't think any. I think it was definitely caricature. It became a caricature of itself, I think, for many people.
Okay. Fair enough. And I think it's time to bring on the panel. They are patiently waiting for the both of you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, saddle up, and here comes open panel dumpster fire. Oops. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am officially opening up the gauntlet. If you are subscribed over to that channel, you can start making your way now. If not, I will be shortly guiding you all over that direction. I want to give the rules of the panel. Most of you are, actually, I think all of you are regulars here. Please be mindful of interruptions. Don't talk, especially if I'm talking. Outside of that, let's have some fun. And of course, Andrew, I know you wanted to make your way to the panel, so I'll let you kick us off.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Ruben, don't take this the wrong way. I'm going to ask you a question in good faith. Are you gay by chance?
No. I saw that quite a bit in the chat, actually. And that was kind of, it was an I don't, but no, the short answer is no.
Never? Not even once, right?
No, so I think there was like a moment, and I go into this a little bit. There was a moment where but it never, nothing ever came of it. But I guess there was someone that I thought was kind of something, but then in that.
I'm okay with the short answer, Ruben. I wouldn't feel any need to persuade.
No, Sarah, I want to hear the whole story, Sarah.
So basically, there was like a moment where I did realize like there's a difference between anxious attachment, or like I guess maybe that was the moment I realized the difference between like anxious attachment and love or Christ. But nothing came up, like nothing ever came of it. It was, and in some ways, maybe I was like too open, like, and then I was like, oh, well, that was just kind of also like I'm 33, so like I grew up in like the 90s, like that kind of like where I don't know, it was just a different time, but nothing came of it.
Okay, so just like concisely, just to put everybody, because there's so many people want to know the answer to this for some reason. Just concisely, have you ever done any gay stuff with any dudes?
I've never dated or anything. I never dated a man.
Okay. All right. There we go. All right. There we go. Easy, simple. All right. So then moving on from what's the flustered look, Sarah? I don't know why people want to know the answer to this.
That's his personal. Is the question of the debate is Ruben gay? No, come on, leave that out of it.
But Joseph Smith is.
Okay, so anyway, I just want to lead into my first question. So I was wondering if you could actually assist me with this. If we could just maybe play a game. The game is make any truth statement, just any. And I want to show you a response that I have, which can falsify the entirety of your position. So anything that you know that's true, go ahead and state that out loud. Anything.
The alphabet has 26 letters in it.
Yeah, like anything you think is true, just say.
I would say love is based on reality.
Yeah, but God told me it wasn't.
I would say that all signs kind of point to. I would say all roads lead there.
Yeah, but God told me that I shouldn't believe in science.
Then you are rejecting objective.
But God told me that I'm not doing that.
So I think the point I do want to make is that I would there is you do like we don't believe that whatever God says in a vacuum, right? There is like a basic framework and
prescription. But God told me that you do believe that.
But well, that's not our core belief system. So I guess
but God told me that it is part of your core belief system.
But it's not.
Yeah, but it is because God told me it is.
But there was nothing. Well, I don't know if you keep going down this line, but there wasn't anything that I said that was subjectively, I think, correlated or in the vein.
God told me that everything that you say about this is incorrect.
So I guess if this played out in real life, I would just exit the conversation or
why?
Kind of.
Would you believe me?
Would I believe you? Well, it's not about whether well, no, because you're making a demonstrably blanket statement with the intention of with no objective direction.
There's an objective direction. I'm expressing to you that I can negate or affirm anything that you say by simply saying that God told me either the opposite is true or that the thing itself is true. How would you falsify that? What would you do to falsify that?
I mean, I think I give humanity maybe a lot more credit or too much credit. I would say that.
What would you do? What would you do, though, to falsify it?
I don't know that I would care enough to do so unless it was like someone that was asking something in good faith.
So if it's the case that somebody came to you and said Satan is actually God, would you try to falsify that?
I think most people actually, I think that God most people believe in is Satan in Christendom.
Wait, the God most people believe in Christendom is Satan?
I think whenever Jesus in John 44 does say, if your father was my father, you would recognize me, but your father is the devil.
So how would you falsify that? How would you falsify that Satan's not the real God?
I would say he's not the God of Christ, and I would delineate that Christ does say,
but God told me that he is.
Well, then your God is Satan.
No, well, how do you know? Can you show me how? How
Well,
you know
in John
that?
8:44, well, there's characteristics. There's characteristics, right? Jesus said, like, my kingdom is not of
So
the
you would
world.
use the Bible as a standard for which to falsify this belief that I have?
So to be honest, because I do believe in internal progression, I would try to use the standard of your existing ideology, right? So I would probably ask you more questions and then drive them to their logical conclusion.
Yeah, sure. So you drive it to the logical conclusion that I'm wrong, but I don't accept that. How would you posit this? Even if you destroyed my entire belief structure, how would you then affirm yours was true?
So, okay, let me rewind. So you're saying can we play it out? Because
yeah, sure. So God told me so. You've proved to me that God couldn't have done that by using Scripture as a standard. Okay, now I believe that you have destroyed my worldview. Now replace it with yours. Show me why yours is true. Because even if mine's false,
if I was gonna show you, or if I was gonna demonstrate like what my worldview is or what it's true, I think I would start with, what inspires you as a question.
knowing exactly what your worldview is so that I can adopt it. But you got to convince me. That inspires me. It inspires me
I would say that's
when I have a falsified worldview to have it replaced with the evidence of your worldview.
So I think that's a fundamental difference in even the orientation of our worldviews, because my view would be to take you from where you're at, and
where I'm at is you destroyed my worldview. Now replace it with the proof of yours.
But my goal has never been to replace your belief system with mine.
Your goal is not to evangelize for the LDS, and what do you have evangelists running around for?
No. So you're asking my personal goal is to, if I was going to talk to a person, right, like, is to find the beauty in them and then kind of begin to construct the elements and the different points of.
Do you see beauty in me?
I think you're kinder than I think you probably let on the world to be.
I agree. I'm a very kind.
I call bullshit.
Hang on. I'm a very kind. Hang on. He's right. I'm a very kind, beautiful man. Now that you've seen the beauty in me, can you just go ahead and show me how your worldview is true?
But I don't. But see, I fundamentally reject that, because we believe in internal progression. So we have to take you kind of where you're at and expound, like, and develop that. It's not just me tell you what to believe and what to do. I think in that way it is very different.
Well, okay. So, is your worldview true?
My worldview that people expand outwardly, I would say, is objectively true.
Good. Now show me how.
Well, I imagine you were not whatever height and weight you are now whenever you were born.
That's nice that you imagine that.
So then there's some indication that you are in some way developing some.
These are inferences, right? So if your worldview is just that you can make logical inferences, then okay, you've convinced me. But
Well,
is it
it's
your
not even
worldview
just
that
that,
the
is
LD that the LDS belief is true, right?
While you're
it's true
giving
that
that,
something. It's true in the sense that it's within everyone, not true in the sense that I'm beating you over the head with it from the outside in.
Yeah, but is it true or not?
give that a thought for a moment, Ruben. Logistically speaking, we're going to shut down the Raging Tomato and everybody's moving over to the Gauntlet. I have set up the raid. Otherwise, follow the link in the chat. Thank you kindly. Back to you, Ruben.
Yeah, go ahead, Ruben.
So I guess I would say that I think the idea of eternal progression is that there is a soul essence that you kind of have that is good and godly and is, or is a child of God, and then that kind of expands or moves outwardly.
You know, maybe we can do it this way. Are Muslims correct in their theology?
I don't know enough about their theology.
Are Buddhists correct in their belief structure of Zen?
I would say the issue that I have with Buddhism is that it is completely removed from the human experience, which is divergent from. I would say it can get into it can become a little bit luciferic because it's too removed from the body.
Got it.
And from
And why is that wrong? What standard are you applying to tell me that that's wrong?
You're going to disassociate from your temporal needs.
And why is that wrong, though? What standard makes that wrong?
Well, it's going to degenerate your body, right?
Yeah, but what standard makes it wrong for me to degenerate my body?
Well, it's self-destructive.
Yeah, but what standard makes self-destruction wrong?
Everything.
What does that mean? Everything.
So the entire nature is I thought evolution and expansion.
Yeah, but if you're looking at it,
everything we do, I think
if you're looking at things through an evolutionary prism, then self-destruction can't be inherently wrong, nor objectively wrong.
From a what perspective?
An evolutionary perspective.
Why?
Because what would make it wrong?
Self-destruction.
Yeah, what would make it wrong?
Because it would fundamentally illustrate that there's no point in anything.
Yeah, but what makes that wrong, though?
Well, it would be, I guess, a vain god or one that is purely.
See how he's just saying everything is bad because it's bad because it's bad, and that's bad because it's bad, and it's bad because it's bad. What I'm asking for is a standard that you can give me that would demonstrate that I could hold. Hang on. That I can hold against.
Which are good, and things that are destructive are bad.
Is an uplifting subjective?
I would hope not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I tell a person? Can I call one of my friends a stupid F slur and it uplifts him? And also call a stranger a stupid F slur and it makes him feel bad?
I don't think a friend I think could bypass that. That might be like their default state or where they're at, but it's not.
They just think it's funny, right? They just think it's fucking funny. They think it's funny, and so they laugh, and it uplifts them.
Well, that'll probably be like already like some sort of too far. Not I don't want to say too far gone, but it's probably a place where they're too disassociated with spirit and emotion.
Why would they be disassociated with spirit and emotion because they thought it was funny? Does the God that you worship not want me to have a good sense of humor, or what?
But if objectively tearing you down or talking down to you is something that makes you feel uplifted.
But this is
clarity question.
This is really interesting, though. You remember earlier you were talking about how you tear your muscles down to build them back up, right? And that's a form of suffering, which you think is part of building a person up. Wouldn't the same exact thing apply with language, that you could break a person down with words in order to build them back up? So in a way, it's a necessary form of suffering designed to uplift the human spirit.
I would say that becomes very. No, I would say that you start to get into the reason. I think the delineating marker is the intent in the direction. One, because if you're destroying something, right? It's satanic, right? Because you're basically destroying something so you can reconstitute it in your image or your.
You can just reconstitute it, and can't you destroy lies so you can reconstitute them in truth?
You're kind of doing a ping pong. So
no, there's not a ping pong. It's the same logic. Can you destroy a lie and then reconstitute it in truth?
It's not the same logic, because when you tear down a muscle, there's an objective direction that you're going
there's
to.
An objection,
when
there's
you're
an
taking
objective direction
and you're
to
tearing them down,
a
you're first tearing them down to.
Yeah.
So you took them from a place, you brought them down, then you brought them back up. I would
so
say
if you believed in lies, you wouldn't want me to tear you down so I could build you back up with the truth.
I don't know that telling a truth isn't necessarily tearing someone down.
Well, no, that's not what I said. If you believed in lies, would it be okay for me to tear down your worldview of lies so I could reconstitute it with truth?
If it was solicited upon you, I guess. But
why would it need to be solicited upon me to do that? Why do I need fucking permission to do that, bro? Why is that necessary?
Well, I do believe in a God of consent. So I do believe in consent. Do you not believe in consent?
No, you don't believe in a God of consent? What are you talking about? What does that mean? What does that even mean? A God?
Do.
Okay, so
otherwise rape would be okay.
Wait. I'm sorry. Do you think that God would necessarily have to permit all things in order for him to not permit some things?
I think this is why the nature of God matters.
Like, for instance, do you think God has ever, struck Sodom and Gomorrah and struck everybody down in the city of Sodom and the city of Gomorrah? So did they consent to it, bro?
So
did they consent to God nuking them because they tried to rape an angel?
Like the idea of like the question of the God of the Old Testament, or the question of who is the God of when Christ says, if your father was my father, you would recognize me, but your father's a devil, the father of lies.
Do you worship the God? Do you worship the God of the Old Testament?
I worship the God of Christ.
And is that the same God in the Old Testament?
I'm not sure. I think
you're not sure.
It goes back and forth. I have some. There's reasons to believe that. I mean, just John 44 alone is a good reason to believe that there's some nuance, like there's some conflation in that God of the Old Testament.
Well, he's the Logos.
Did Jesus reference the God of the Old Testament as being his father that he's referencing?
My Father which is in heaven. I don't know that the God of the Old Testament is in. So I'm not saying that. So I guess my position is that there is some. I wouldn't say like in every sequence. So I believe like the God of Isaiah is the same God of Christ, but then.
Which was that New or Old Testament?
Isaiah is the Old Testament.
Oh, well, then I guess it must be the God of the Old Testament then.
I think you have to again. So who would you say? Would you say is the God that Christ is referring to in John 8:44?
The same God who's in the Old Testament.
So he calls that God Satan in 8:44.
Which God?
So in John 8:44, Christ says,
well, just reference the passage, dude. Don't make me guess at it. What does it say?
If your father was my father, you would recognize me, but your father is a devil, the father of lies.
Yeah, that's not saying. Yeah, that's so silly, bro. Let's break it down. What he's saying is, you are not worshiping God correctly, not that the God of the Old Testament is not the correct God. That's absurd. Right. That is literally the most absurd thing I've heard today.
Right. But that becomes a question.
They're saying the God you're worshiping is totally unrecognizable to me.
But the nature of the God that or how you worship God indicates the nature of the God that you're worshiping.
Yeah, so he's saying that the way that they're referencing God, the way that they're worshiping God is incorrect. It's not the same God that he knows. That's what he's saying. He's saying that you have juxtaposed in the nature of my God for satanic principles, for Luciferian principles. That's what he's saying. Not that the God of the Old Testament is not the same God.
No, but what's happening is that the worldview of this body of people and this kind of daisy chain of people and the way that they're doing what they're doing would illustrate that it is in reference to a nature of God that is opposite to his own father.
This is how stupid this is, bro. Let's say that God's name was Danny, hypothetically. His name was Danny. And what happened is you said, listen, here's all the qualities of Danny throughout all of time. Now, we're referencing God as Danny here, okay? And so you go over to a bunch of people and you say, this isn't how Danny would act. This is not the, like you keep saying you worship Danny, but this isn't actually how Danny is. The nature of Danny is not this way. The nature of the thing you're worshiping is Paul, right? It's not Danny. Definitely not Danny. It's more like Paul over here, right? That is not negating the existence of Danny. That is not negating what Danny is or that you worship Danny. It's only saying that whatever the attributes that you're giving to Danny are incorrect as to what the attributes of Danny should be. That's it. That's what it's saying. It's more, what you're doing is more akin to worshiping Satan than God. Not that there's no God of the Old Testament. That's just silly.
But how you worship something indicates the orientation by which you view that thing.
Yeah, I agree, but that would have nothing to do with the bearing of the nature of the God of the Old Testament.
But a lot of these same people wrote that same Old Testament.
What? No, they didn't. Those same people right then did not write any of that Old Testament. In fact, what are you talking about?
Then, but they didn't. Their ideology was not in a vacuum.
No, but here's the thing. Do you think that right now there's people who could say that they're worshiping Christ and could actually be worshiping Satan?
Yes.
Okay. How is that possible, though? How could that ever be possible that people could say that they're worshiping Christ, but actually be worshiping Satan? Could we possibly, I don't know, look at the attributes of what they're worshiping and how they're worshiping it to make that determination, just like they did in that passage?
Yes,
yeah.
But the hyper ritualistic, okay, right. But what I'm getting at is that the hyper ritualistic, vengeful and angry, or that requires blood sacrifice, for example, I would say is a satanic being, right?
What do you mean?
Blood sacrifice.
You mean animal sacrifice? You talking about animal sacrifice?
Right.
Did Jesus make a blood sacrifice?
I believe. No. Yeah. Right. But that's kind of where I'm getting at. No, but that's what I'm getting at, right? Because you cannot be both a debitor and a creditor, right? You're either a debitor or you're a creditor.
Uh-huh. Why were they sacrificing? Do you know why they sacrificed animals?
So if you paid for something, right, then he's diametrically opposed to the thing he's paying to.
Do you know why they sacrificed animals in the Old Testament?
So there's.
You have no idea.
I mean, there was different requests, right? But it was, for their god, more or less, or which I would say that god is Satan.
You have no idea what you're talking about, dude. You have no idea why they even sacrificed animals.
So why? So tell me why they sacrificed animals.
Why couldn't they, for instance? Why were they not allowed to char the bones of the animal, for instance, give that as sacrifice? They had to give the fat of the animal instead, the good part. Why did they have to give the good part? What was that all about? Do you know what that was all about? You don't know. You have no idea.
No, I'm waiting for you to tell me.
You have no idea.
No, it was the idea. No, so it was the idea that he required a sacrifice, but I would say that God is Satan.
You think the Old Testament God is Satan?
Hang on. I just want to make sure I got this right.
I think the God that requires sacrifice is Satan.
What if he requires the sacrifice of crops?
So crops, I think crops would be a little different, but an arbitrary blood sacrifice, I would say is satanic. Going back to Christ, right? If he paid for our sins, right?
What about crops? Hang on. What about crops? Hang on. What about crops? What about crops?
You know what? Yeah. I would have an issue with that. I would have an issue with requiring an overt material sacrifice.
So then Cain and Abel, the God who was there when Cain and Abel was there, when there was a sacrifice offered to God, and then he looked down on the one sacrifice with favor, which was Abel's, and then Cain killed him for it. That was actually Satan, right?
I think any God that requires a blood sacrifice is Satan. I would say that.
Hang on, you just said crops the same way.
Is that the sacrifice is internal and spiritual? I would say.
Can you answer? What's the question I asked you though?
Something about Abel and.
Yeah, let's try it again. Cain and Abel. Can you tell me the story?
I don't know much of the Old Testament, to be honest with you.
But I'm sorry, the Old Testament is part of Mormon dogma from Genesis on.
I haven't. I'll be very honest. I haven't gone through all of it. I just haven't.
But I mean, you don't know the story of Cain and Abel?
You don't know the story of Bigfoot?
I don't know. I mean, enlighten me.
He's on the panel.
Yeah, the story of Cain and Abel. Yeah, so these were Adam and Eve's sons. These were Adam and Eve's sons. Okay, and one murdered the other one. After they gave sacrifices to God, he looked on one favorably, which was Abel's sacrifice, and he rejected Cain's because the malice that Cain had.
Satanic, for sure.
So then you think
that's fine.
Dude.
So you think your own dogma is satanic?
So we're very clear of when we talk about Christ, the God of Christ and the living God. I think we're very clear in orientation as to the nature of the God that we worship in Christ. I think a lot of, and actually we were talking about this last night, a few Latter-day Saints, but there's been quite a bit of dissonance with the Old Testament amongst, even I think Lego Joseph Smith last night was talking about like the Old Testament is just off. I think a lot of us feel that way.
Okay, so but the book of Genesis, same thing.
Yeah, I in a lot of ways I do believe personally that the God of the Old Testament is not the God of Christ.
Can I direct you?
Can I debtor and a creditor?
Yeah, can I direct you real quick to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints help guide on their official church? I'm going to link it to you right now so that you can pull this up and follow along with me. This will be really very informational for you. You can find it in the private chat right now. Go ahead and you can pull that right up.
Let me see.
Okay, so to do what?
Yeah, so you can just follow. Can you just read that for me?
Where do you want me to go to?
Just click the link that I put in the private chat.
Oh, okay.
Yep, just click the link I put in the private chat and then just start reading. Out loud, please, for the rest of the class.
I can do it if you want.
A son of Adam and Eve who slew his younger brother Abel over jealous greed. Some of his descendants were skilled in... Right. So, okay,
So, hang on. What's the source?
You're giving me a dictionary.
What's the source? Yeah, click on the source that it gives you, bro. It's
Genesis
on their
4,
own page. Yeah, and they link it as part of their dogma on the official Latter-day Saints site. Are you sure you're even a Mormon?
Hold on. So when you're saying as part of the dogma,
it's the part of the entrenched belief structure of Mormonism doesn't even work without Genesis. It can't even work because Christ has to come. Christ has to be heralded by the previous prophets. Adam has to happen for there to be Jesus Christ. Cain and Abel have to happen for there to be a Jesus Christ. None of it even works. None of the dogma even works. Absent having the fall from the garden, none of it even works, bro. So the thing is this is an intricate part of your own dogma, and you just called the God who demanded the sacrifices from these people the devil.
So
do you realize what you just did? What you just did was you blasphemed against the Holy Spirit, my friend.
So, well, blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is literally doing like blasphemy against
blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is rejecting the very fundamental nature of God. You just called him Satan. What do you think that's doing?
I continue to say that I'm very comfortable calling a God that requires blood sacrifice satanic. I think the entire idea of Christ. So Joseph Smith does, and so a big delineation with our doctrine is that we don't believe in the original sin in the same way, right? So I
didn't say that you have to believe in original sin the same way. What I said is that you have to believe that Cain and Abel, the story there about their sacrifices to God, who you just said has to be demonic.
No, not really, because our theology kind of revolves around that the fall was kind of happened so that we may individuate and then become exalted. So it was more so I don't know that our fall necessarily requires this level of dogma in this way. I mean, we have the dictionary as a reference. Which is what
did Adam and Eve have children?
Yeah, I mean,
what were their names?
Materialized.
Yeah, what were their names?
I would say is irrelevant. I mean, I'll take whatever you say their names were.
Cain and Abel were their first sons. Cain and Abel. That's what's being referenced there. The children of Adam and Eve, and one killed the other one. And we know now what's really interesting about this is here's why this has to happen. Because there's a very, very pivotal place called Enoch. Have you ever heard of Enoch?
Yes.
Okay. Enoch is founded by fucking Cain. It's founded by Cain, the child of Adam. The firstborn son of Adam goes off to found a city called Enoch, and which is where we start tracing the rooted out history of everything else. So it has to happen. Has to. Or it doesn't work, bro.
So I would say certain things having to happen so that we may become exalted and individuate. We would agree with that. The details and then how literal they are, I would say.
So the city of Enoch is literal.
You're making three different claims. So so you're saying one that had to happen, which fine, but then you're saying that them having to happen, and the fact that one killed another is then somehow directly correlated to the nature of God. And
no, I didn't say anything about the no. What I'm saying is this. If you claim the nature of any god which requires sacrifice is satanic, right? Even though that's absurd because you believe in Christ's sacrifice, but okay, we'll just hang on. We'll just grant it. I'm just going to grant it, right? Then you would have to reject the story of Cain and Abel, which would give you the accounting for the first city which Cain made. He made after he was sent off into he went and hid in the wilderness after being marked by God. He went and founded basically the first major city of all of humankind. That's what he did. You need to read Genesis, dude.
I'm trying to figure out what you're getting at.
I'm saying that the Bible has a linear passage of events that gets us to core events. Without the linear passage of the previous events, we can't give an accounting for those core events. Do you understand?
I understand.
It's like this. It's like this. Do you live in a house?
Yeah, no.
Then I'm going to assume that you somehow got into that house, that there was a sequence of events that made you to get into that house somehow. Like you rented it, you bought it, or you live with your parents, right? But there was some sequence of events that led up to that. So in order for me to really know, right, the history of you, I have to know all the sequence of events that led up to where you are, right?
So we have like the war in heaven, and I don't know that the war in heaven is necessarily this sequence of events that you're talking about.
And where was the war of heaven? Where is that described? Do you know?
What is the nature of humanity, right? Like, how did we?
Yeah, when was the war in heaven is described by who?
You
don't know.
It's a core. So a lot of it I saw by I guess in my background with Latter-day Saints is that I had a lot, in large part, the same vision and a lot of the theology. I was like, oh, I saw that. So a lot of it is more so like being concurrent with what they were.
Oh, sorry. It was the land of Nod. His son's name was Enoch. My bad. But anyway, Nod, he founds a city in Nod. I had to go and reference it myself just to make sure that I wasn't incorrect. But you would still have to go through Genesis and do one event to the next event to the next event. Have to. Oh no, you know what? Actually, I was right. For Genesis 4:17, Cain builds a city and names it after his son Enoch. I was right. I remembered it just off the top of my fucking head. I remember this stuff, dude. Just off the top of my head. So yeah, the thing is like you have to you have to start at the beginning in order to tie events together to get to the key events. Have you ever heard the Bible self-referencing? That's what it's talking about. It's saying that all events are referencing to all other events.
Well, that's where I have a big issue with. I do personally have a big issue with a lot of the Bible and just the impulses around it, who derived it, the agendas behind who derived it. My personal ideology is that humans are. So I do believe in, and I guess in somewhat of a Big Bang or an inception point. Materiality came. Power and force were splintered, or Jesus, Lucifer. Creation materialized. Humans were in this kind of quandary where they weren't like animal, but they weren't like fully divine. And so, because I guess I do believe that God operates in the
where was that stated anywhere in Genesis?
You just lied. I don't really care, to be honest.
Well, then how do you know? How do you know what you're saying to me is true right now?
Because there's been a lot of independent accounts that
by who? From who?
So I can look up specifically where the war in heaven came. Like who?
You mean Revelation? You gotta look up Revelation, bro.
Go ahead.
You gotta look up Revelation.
Is war in heaven? Is it in Revelation?
Why don't you pull up the war in heaven and tell me what where the passages are?
Heaven. No, it's well. It looks like it is Revelations. Let me see.
Oh, does it? Does it look like that? I didn't know.
I guess I'm trying to fit. So
what passages talk about the war in heaven, bro?
Okay. Is it 22?
What is it? What name the passage and the book?
It's kind of war. I'm trying to war in heaven again because war in heaven. Apostasy of the church. Also, the war in heaven beginning with Satan cast it out. And dragon fought his angels and prevailed not, neither.
Revelations 12:7 through 9, bro. Come on.
Well, I mean, and this kind of goes back to claim. There's a lot of things that
goes over the conflict between. It goes over the conflict between Michael, the angels, all of that. Come on, man.
Sure. Again, but this kind of goes back to my point. Like these things are something that we kind of know deep inside of us.
No, we don't kind of know them deep inside of us. I did not know that the human being started out as like kind of divine, bro, but kind of not really divine, bro. Because you know what, though? I am willing right now for you to present your evidence for that. And you know what? Any evidence will do. Any. Well, I'll take any.
So humans are the apex of the elemental body, right? So we have bones, electricity in our heart, air in our lungs. Liquid in our blood.
Yeah, you know, so do wolves. Hang on, so do wolves. So do wolves. So do wolves. So do wolves.
Answer.
Yeah, so do wolves, and so do antelopes, and so do turtles, and so do fucking almost everything.
So that wasn't my complete. So then but humans, again, kind of like how mentioned earlier, have a unique ability to create or as it was like in our mind, then or materialize or organize. If you want to say that. I guess ultimately, I would say the nature of a just God or the God of Christ is the idea of respecting free will and the self-determination even of the world or people's inherent evolution. Yeah, otherwise, you could say that it's a different God, but then it's not one that I would worship.
So if that's the case, right? Would you say that if somebody told Jesus Christ, right? They told him, I don't know, something like no. Do you think that he would respect that?
If someone told Jesus Christ no,
yeah.
Yes. I believe he would respect that, yes.
Like, do you think that if they told him not to flip over tables in a temple and chase people around with a literal corded whip, that he would respect that?
So even that, right?
Do you think he would respect that, bro?
But here's the big difference, though. Those people had direct implications to people that they oversee. And
so he didn't respect that?
So those people are directly, personally having a really big consequential impact as to the individual free wills of the people they govern over. That's what makes them so different.
Oh, so you can impose your will on people's free will as long as you have a cause. I see.
Well, no, but he ended up being sacrificed over it, right? So
he ended up getting sacrificed because he flipped over some tables with a corded whip. No, I don't think that's what happened, bro.
Well, and he allowed the animals, and then they said, well, which one of the two? And then the people voted. You are saying that it had
no, not the people, nothing. No. You don't even know what you're talking about. No, the Romans were going to let Christ go, and the Pharisaical Jews and the Sadduceical Jews right? They were the ones who demanded he be killed. They demanded it. They were going to let the Romans were going to let him go. Pilate said he didn't see any crime in Christ. He said, this man's done nothing.
Yeah, man.
Would you rather me put a thief to death or this horrible person over here to death or him? And they demanded it be him. He was not killed for whipping people and throwing over tables, bro.
But who and why is it? They've been liars murderers from the beginning. We're seeing that play out right now. So I understand what you're saying. Like, oh, well, it was kind of by this set of standards, right? But ultimately it resulted in that outcome because of the impulse of those people.
But what does that have to do?
And the impulse of those people are the people that govern the world.
But
right?
do you see? Yeah, but do you see how silly this is? Right? You will defer to my proofs for this course of events, but then somehow, when I tell you, okay, all of these proofs for these events are interconnected with the previous proofs for these events to even have happened. So in other words, for all of that to have happened with Christ, all previous events leading up to that had to happen, or it's not possible.